Welcome everyone. My name is Berghmans, and in the video of today we will explore the different governance structures that can support a firm during and after a leadership or ownership transition, ensuring the firm's continuity and stability in the long term. We will also briefly discuss the time we need to prepare the governance structures so they can help in a smooth business succession. Now, everybody who has already worked with family firms has encountered a situation where there is one owner that takes the lead in almost every way. They are leading the operational level, the oversight level, the strategic level, and so on. And I mean, these men and women just cannot let go of any part of the power they possess. And this is not very good because what we oftentimes see is that, especially in the case of successions where the original owner who possesses all the power has to let go of this power, that these successions fail when these structural layers of ownership, governance, and management remain concentrated in one individual. And this is especially the case in succession processes in larger firms where skills and experience are oftentimes not yet present in the successor. And well, yeah, not only in the successors, we also oftentimes see that the original owner really starts to lack the necessary skills and experience when his or her firm grows. Now, in such situations, it's good to know that corporate governance can really play its role in separating these layers, as well as preparing the next generation to take one of these roles, a management role, a governance role, or an ownership role within the firm. Now, corporate governance can take several forms, depending on the maturity and the complexity of the business. The choice of governance structure can really make or break the succession process. And today we will look at 4 key models. So there are obviously more models that are maybe not so common, or there are variations on these models, but these are really the 4 key models of governance. And the first one is the sole director system. A second one are the internal boards. A third one is the boards of advisors. And a fourth one is the boards of directors with external members. So we will begin with the most basic structure that's probably the most common within Europe, and this is the sole director system. And you will probably have encountered this system already many times if you work as a business succession planner. And in this model, all governance decisions are centralized and made by a single individual. And this system is really highly typical for first generation businesses and those smaller SMEs. And it's, in fact, this sole directorship is most appropriate when the business has one dominant owner manager. And in this firm's decision making is still highly entrepreneurial, and succession is often not yet imminent. And the main strengths of the sole director model are, as said, really the fast, decisive decision making and very clear authority. And while this has several strengths, it comes also with several succession risks. There will be a high dependency on one individual. So when the entrepreneur dies, you may have really a big problem. You have very limited checks and balances. So there's nobody's gonna stop the sole director when he or she's making bad choices. And during a succession phase, this system often, not always, but often becomes highly fragile, as successors will lack legitimacy once the authority needs to be shared. And with this, I mean, within the succession process, you will oftentimes have like a child or another family member that is going to take on more responsibilities, but that can constantly be overruled by the existing owner, like the sole director that is constantly going to keep on playing the boss. I mean, this is not a necessity, but it's really a risk of such a system. Also note that the sole directorship could also be in place within firms that have more directors. Sometimes it's legally required that you have 2 or more directors, but that in practice there's only one person that takes all the decision. Within a lot of countries, you do see that sometimes the second director will be the husband or wife or the mother or father, who really doesn't do anything, and all the power remains with only one person, oftentimes the entrepreneur. Now, as a company grows, it may move towards what I would call an internal board. And such a board consists exclusively of internal members, such as the owners, family members, and sometimes even senior executives like the CEO. And in these boards, there are absolutely no independent or external directors with formal board authority. Such an internal board is often chosen during a first to second generation transition, when the owner wants to institutionalize decision making but retain his or her influence or the influence of the family. And this has another advantage is that it offers a high alignment of interests, as all the directors present will be deeply invested in the business. So they will oftentimes work in the firm or own shares in the firm. And this provides psychological comfort to the entrepreneur or the family. It also acts as a safe preparation phase for successors to learn board routines or the practice of governing a firm. So it's also like a learning school for them. But despite its benefits, an internal board has some limitations, obviously. Without outside voices, there is really a high risk of groupthink, and this is especially the case in families that really knit together. There's also weak accountability, where the board may just really rubber stamp the decisions of the major voice within the firm, often the one with the largest stake in the firm, or the founder of the firm. External stakeholders may also question the robustness of this governance once the founder exits, really making an internal board primarily a transitional structure rather than a long-term solution for a firm. And with a long-term solution for a firm, I really mean big firms. Because big firms are oftentimes way more complex, and big firms and complex firms will increasingly need the views of outsiders. And to introduce outside perspectives, families or family firms may often establish what's called a board of advisors. And this board consists only of advisors and exists alongside an internal board of directors and sometimes even alongside a sole director. And this model is often chosen when an owner wants external input and expertise, but is not yet ready to give up his or her legal control or share formal accountability. And the strength of an advisory board here is that it will provide valuable expertise, outside perspectives, and will try to challenge the owners of the firm without, yeah, without really have a political risk to the founders. It will act as an excellent stepping stone toward professionalized governance. So this is really like a first stepping stone that can be taken towards like the fourth model I will present, where we have external board members in the board. Now, even though it has many advantages, there are some limitations. And its main limitation is that advisors have no formal decision rights. So they can easily be overruled by the owners. So they can make very big reports, formulate very good plans for the future of the firm. But if the owner disagrees, or if those in the board disagree, in the internal board, well, it ends there. So they cannot enforce their ideas on the firm. And they also cannot enforce accountability. So these are the main limitations of a board of advisors. So the most advanced model is a board of directors with external members. There also exists a variation on this model in some countries, where you have a two-tier board, where there is like an internal board and an external board, or an oversight board. But I will just talk about a board of directors with external members, because these other formats have similar advantages and disadvantages. So such a board will include owner representatives and internal executives, but will also introduce independent and or external directors. And these external or independent members will have no family ties or financial dependence on the firm. So the difference here with a board of advisors is that they will possess full voting rights and fiduciary duties, making this really a genuine, or making them a genuine part of this governing body. There are several advantages of a board of directors with external members. So these external members will provide immense strategic value. They will offer objective judgment, stronger accountability, and improved risk management. More importantly, they will reduce family bias in decision making and provide greater legitimacy with external stakeholders like banks and investors. Non-family CEOs, if there is a non-family CEO in the firm, or successors also gain vital authority through this institutional backing of a board of directors with external members. However, transitioning to this model carries some risks. Primarily the loss of unilateral family control and and the potential for cultural friction between family norms and these independent directors. It also involves higher coordination costs. So you will have to, in fact, pay more to have such a board, and you will have to invest more time into it. However, once this board is there, it can be really the keystone structure for long-term business succession, allowing the business, and this is especially the case for really big businesses or businesses in that have a third or fourth or fifth generation of family members. Because it will really allow the business to outlive its founders and will be able to balance both the family logic and the business logic. Now, how do you choose the right model? Because you may have got the impression that a board of directors with external members is really the thing you have to aim for. And in fact, you hear this a lot from corporate governance bodies or experts that a board of directors with external members is the thing you really want to have. And this is the best way to govern a firm. But in fact, this is not always the case. It really depends on the firm's specific situation, right? If you have a very small firm that may not be able to pay because you have to pay advisors or external directors, well, forget a board of advisors or a board of directors with external members if they cannot pay for it. But there are also situations that are independent from financial constraints, where you may want to choose for a sole directorship or an internal board or a board of advisors over a board of directors with external members. So if there is only one owner that needs fast decisions and there's only one successor, a sole directorship may still fit this firm. If there are multiple successors or multiple shareholders, an internal board may be ideal because this is what they want. They may feel comfortable with it. So that's perfectly fine. But if you notice that a founder is really starts to be open to challenge, you may want to recommend a board of advisors, especially if he wants to retain the legal control or the real control over the firm, but he wants some challenge. He wants to share some thoughts. He wants to get some more expertise. A board of advisors can be a magnificent addition to an existing internal board or a sole director. And if the goal of that firm or that family firm is to really have long-term continuity beyond the founding family members or the second generation, yes. And if the firm is obviously large enough and can pay for it, a board of directors is really recommended. So in case you have to recommend a corporate governance structure, the question is not which structure is best, but rather which governance structure supports this business at this specific stage of succession. And on this side, we try to address again the fact that there is no perfect model, and every choice involves some trade-offs. And To avoid like unintended consequences during a succession, we must consciously navigate these competing needs. For example, as you can see here in this table, a founder-centric or structure allows for very fast decisions. And introducing a board, especially one with external members, will inevitably slow down the decision-making process. But it can trade that speed for significantly improved robustness or oversight or risk management. So there are some advantages to it. And we see the same for emotional comfort. Internal boards and sole directorships rely on shared history and trust, which feels familiar and safe. Whereas, yeah, external directors provide an independent challenge, and this can sometimes be difficult that these people offer an objective view. And this can really disrupt the old family dynamics. Um, so what we also see is that like only these external a board of directors with external members will force like formal accountability, formal rules people have to adhere to. If you are a sole director, you do what you want. If you have internal boards, there may be some rules, but you can collectively just decide whatever you want. There's no real accountability from a corporate governance point of view. A board of advisors, these people also can't you can overrule them, so they cannot impose any rules on the ruling family. But if you have like really these external members, yeah, you have some formal accountability. You have to listen to them. You have to follow certain corporate governance rules you agreed on. So this may be difficult, but at the same time, this may grant a new leadership true legitimacy within the firm. So every system has, or every structure has its advantages and disadvantages, and it's your task as a BSP to look what's best for the firm. So, and here you see the pathway to institutionalization, but it's important to remember that it's perfectly okay if you take this pathway very slowly. Um, it's perfectly okay if a family firm decides we don't want a board of directors with externals, or we don't want a board of advisors, or we want to go from the sole directorship immediately to a board of directors with external members. So skip the internal board, skip the board of advisors, but immediately go to the board of directors with external members. So there is no one pathway to the perfect form of corporate governance, if that even would exist. And it's perfectly okay that you, as a business succession planner, notice yourself that a particular firm isn't ready, large or complex enough to pay for advisors or external board members. So it's really totally up to the situation and that particular firm to choose the the corporate governance structures that suits them best. So when do you start with the development of the chosen governance system? Well, obviously the best time is to start as early as possible, as with all aspects of business succession, but in general, 5 up to 3 years upfront can be seen as a golden rule to build up the governance. And here are some guidelines, ideas I have about how you can, in fact, organize this in an effective way. So 5 years upfront, you are going to the firm and try to diagnose their corporate governance needs. So which type of corporate governance would suit their succession, but also their firm in the best way. And you can also assess at the same time the readiness of the firm. How ready are they? How open are they to have a different corporate governance structure? Now, 1 year later, or 4 years before the succession, you will try to clarify the decision rights that will be awarded to the corporate governance structure. Like, will there be external people who will be able to vote, which family members will be able to vote, and so on. 3 years before the succession, you should try to adapt the governance structure. So if you have chosen to go from a sole directorship to a sole directorship with a board of advisors, or if you're going for an internal board or a board of directors with externals, you have to do this at this point in time. Now, from then on, you will have to try to oversight the transition, because this may sometimes be not that easy, especially for founders, to hand over the power, especially, well, to externals, but sometimes also to their own family members. So you will really have to keep track of what they are doing in the new governance structure. So if you have an internal board, you have to watch out that the old owner isn't too dominant. If advisors or externals are taken seriously, and so on. And yeah, at the succession and after the succession, you will have the handover phase, where, for example, the old owner can still be part of a board of directors. So that's perfectly possible. And really try to institutionalize and further professionalize the chosen corporate governance body. So we have arrived at the end of this presentation. I would like to conclude this presentation with one last very important message. And it in fact refers to the timeline I have given you on the previous slide. And this message is that the best time to build your succession architecture or corporate governance architecture or structure, if you want, was 5 years ago. But the second best time is today. And this is very important. Even if a family firm or a client comes to you a few months before a succession process, or even if the succession process has already happened because the founder has died or suddenly was not able anymore to govern or manage the firm, well, you still can do a lot by working on it immediately. So you can be late, but there is never a too late in building or improving corporate governance structures within a family firm. And with this message, I would like to end this presentation, and I would like to thank you for the attention, and I hope you will be able to use these lessons or insights I gave you today. Thank you very much.